everyone and welcome back to my channel, or should I say hello my beautiful bookish friends, because today I am making a booktube video. This one is not about reading, it's not about books, it's about booktube. I have been on booktube for over a year and I love it. Best decision I've ever made. I love getting back into reading. I have so many books now. I just have acquired so many in the last year and a half ish, but I wanted to make a video to inform you the people about booktube. If you want to start a booktube channel, this is going to be the video for you, and I wish this video would have existed when I started because I was confused and made some really blah type boring videos and didn't know what I was talking about. But now, after being in the community for a while, participating in events and readathons and talking to other creators, I have put together a list of words you need to know if you want to start booktube, because there's so many terms that have been made up for booktube and acronyms and things like that. So let's get started. Some of the most important words you need to know are actually acronyms. So one of the biggest being TBR. I kept hearing TBR over and over again when I started watching booktube videos and had no real idea what it meant until I was like, duh, to be read. So your TBR is the books you want to read. Normally people make their monthly TBR videos saying what books they want to read during the month, and they usually put those out around the first or second day of the month. Some even go into the middle of the month depending on how many videos they make per month. There are also seasonal TBRs. A lot of people will come out and say these are very wintry books that I want to read throughout the winter or recommend for you. These are very autumnal books that I want to read throughout the year. Just kind of giving you a sense of what gives you like a whatever like setting you're kind of in real life, compared to the books that can make you enjoy the book more. If you are a mood reader and it's spooky season, then they might suggest a horror TBR or October TBR. It just all depends. Now you can also have a lifetime TBR, which is just a growing list of books that you want to read in your lifetime. The next acronym that you will probably hear a lot, especially from bigger booktubers, is ARC. So I didn't know what an ARC was until I started watching some bigger YouTubers, and these are advanced reader copies. These are books that a lot of people get sent from publishers to read early before they hit shelves so that they can give you a review and generate buzz for the book before it ever comes out and ever gets on anybody's shelves. So a lot of people get these, and you can request them no matter how big or small your channel is, but just know that you'll probably get turned down unless you have quite a big following on Goodreads, work for a publisher, or have been doing booktube for a while. And if you have been, you're probably not watching this video. The next thing you'll hear about a lot, especially every month, or if you watch Chelsea Darling Reads or Books in Lala, you will hear the words readathon a lot. And a readathon is basically a week or more of challenges that a creator sets for themselves, and you can participate. Usually there are challenges on Instagram and Twitter and even on YouTube for you to do. I have done a few readathons myself, so if you want to see kind of how those are structured, I will leave my booktube playlist listed up here so you guys can see how those basically work. But basically it is just a list of challenges to add to your TBR or completely be your TBR for that week, and you try and meet them. So some examples of that are Contemporary-a-thon, which I just did in February, and then Spookathon happens every year in October, and Fantasy-a-thon happens intermittently throughout the year. So you can just type in readathon on YouTube and you'll usually come across a couple that are currently going on or have gone on in the past. Now let's talk about genre, because when I was in school there was like 62 different genres of books and the way books fit into them. Now on booktube they are much more condensed and kind of fit in different little buckets, if you will. So let's talk about what these mean and how you can classify your books by genre, because I was terrible at this when I started booktube. First genre is contemporary. That is personally my favorite kind of genre right now, and that is a like realistic present day fiction. So one that you might see a lot, what's a contemporary a lot of people are talking about right now? Red, White, and Royal Blue is a big one. That is a contemporary. And there are a whole lot of other categories that we'll talk about too that these books fall into, but this is just genres. We'll also talk about age groups and some smaller little niche genres, but we'll start with the big ones first. So you have contemporary. Then there is thriller. This is spooky, psychological, messes with your mind, twists around every corner sort of books. So things like Stephen King stuff like Misery. The Drowning is one I read that I highly recommend to everyone. Truly Devious is, I think, considered a thriller. So those kind of books that kind of play with your mind and are a little bit spooky. And then, of course, we have mystery, which mystery thriller are usually kind of put together because a thriller is usually a mystery. Truly Devious is a mystery. Of course, anything Sherlock Holmes is. And you can have paranormal mystery. You can have contemporary mystery. You can have historical mystery. Stalking Jack the Ripper is a great historical mystery. So as you see, a lot of these genres kind of overlap with each other. The next one I have written down is historical fiction, kind of self-explanatory, something that took place in like Victorian London is a big time for historical fiction that a lot of people seem to like. Then we have fantasy. So fantasy falls into a couple different categories as well. You can have high fantasy where like a whole world exists and there's different languages and creatures, and think of like the Bone Witch. And if you don't know about the Bone Witch, highly recommend. There are different kingdoms, there are different classes, there are different races, there are different, you know, just all kinds of things. Like you really have to invest in the world, and usually a high fantasy is quite a few books long because the world is so well developed. You can have low fantasy or contemporary fantasy, which is more of your like witchy type stuff. So like These Witches Don't Burn and The Wicked Deep, I consider low or a contemporary fantasy. Then you have sci-fi, again, pretty self-explanatory. Anything that takes place in space or the future. It has a lot of space-agey technology, which is my least favorite genre, but that's just my personal opinion. Then you have dystopia, which of course is like utopia, but things are going horribly wrong in it. So like Brave New World, Pandemonium, Delirium. I really don't read a lot of dystopia. I'm not a big dystopia fan. So if you are someone who likes worlds like that, I would go to someone else for recommendations. Then of course you have romance. You can have adult romance, you can have young adult romance. That one's pretty easy. There's usually a love story and the whole story centers around that. Then you have graphic novels. These are like comic books. These are your panels, your bright colors, some are in black and white. And there's all different kinds of graphic novels. Just even beyond superheroes, you can get contemporary ones, you can get historical fiction ones, there's horror ones. Any sort of genre at this point has basically been turned into a graphic novel. Is retellings. These are usually folklore stories that are, you know, old fairy tales. Like I have the Disney Twisted Tales collection, which are all retellings of Beauty and the Beast, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, all that kind. Basically any sort of story that's already been told that they are remixing and redoing. And then of course you have classics. So Sherlock Holmes, Jane Eyre, all of those kinds, those are your literary classics. So then we have age groups. We have young adult, which you will hear a lot of people refer to as YA. And this is basically not necessarily that the book is meant for young adult readers, but that the characters in the book fit in that age. So Barnes & Noble breaks theirs down by, I believe, intended age group. Age categories don't matter. And if I'm 22 and I love YA. So YA is usually considered someone who is about 16 to 18. It's gonna be that like right in the middle of high school age. Although some adult books, like adult aged characters, I've noticed are written in a YA style. So there's a lot of crossover, but YA is mainly your kind of high school age characters. Then you have new adult. New adult is usually college age. So these are, you know, your 19 to like 25 kind of age characters. trying to think of people who are kind of that age in some of the books I've read. Like Fangirl is considered YA, but it's really new adult. I can't think of any that I have. I either have YA or adult. I don't really have an in-between, but there's a lot of crossover between the two. So they usually say that people read up, like they read older than they are, but I read down, so don't really know. Then of course you have middle grade. These are books intended for middle school age kids, and they usually have middle school age characters in them, but there are a lot of middle grades coming out there dealing with really serious issues, which I think is great because we need to educate middle school kids on serious issues, especially because they're might be living it. But middle grade is just so younger kids, so you're gonna have that like 12 and below kind of age. Then you have adult. These are people who are over 25, you know, probably have their life kind of together in the book. Get a Life Chloe Brown is a good example of an adult novel. And usually adult novels do have adult content, so if you are younger and looking to read an adult novel, just know that there is probably adult content in it. And I believe publishers classify between new adult, young adult, and adult by some of the number of swear words. Like a young adult book can't be considered young adult unless there is below a certain number. I learned that. And then of course you have children's books. Self-explanatory, meant for younger kids. You know, 3 to 9 range I think is what they say basically. And then it goes to middle grade. If you're someone looking for a book for someone, I recommend going on Barnes & Noble or on Amazon and scrolling to the bottom, and they will give you the intended age range for certain books. So another big thing that gets thrown around on Booktube a lot are the words diverse reads. So these are reads that are basically different from your own experience. So anything other than a book is considered diverse if it is someone who is not white, straight, cisgendered, and is not differently abled. So a lot of times these books have people of color, they have LGBTQIA plus representation, just basically any different experience. There are immigrant stories, people who are differently abled, neurological diversity a lot of the time is a big one. So basically for me, diverse read would be like a person of color, a gay person, a lesbian person, a trans person, a queer person, and then like any sort of immigrant story, all of that kind of stuff. So it's basically based on you, what makes your reading diverse based on your own experiences. Then you hear a lot about anthologies, especially if you watch Books and Lala. Anthologies are a bind up of short stories that come together to make one book. So I have Hungry Hearts, which is one that's all different short stories about food related stuff. There is Toil and Trouble, which is about witches. And there's a whole other like world of anthologies out there. If you just type in anthology, you will probably find a good collection of them. Then we have standalones and series. This is pretty self-explanatory, but a standalone book is just a book that's meant to be a one-off. You get the beginning and the end of the story all in one. So The Wicked Deep is a great standalone. And then you have series, so things like The Bone Witch, Harry Potter, the Mortal Instruments, all of those type of things. Books that go on and on and on and on and on. Those are series. Then we have nonfiction. Nonfiction is a world that a lot of people do not get into for some reason. You either love nonfiction or you hate nonfiction. This is biographies, autobiographies, true crime stories, pretty simple. Anything that's actually happened and is factual. And there is the rating system, which is super important if you are a booktube. People will give 1 to 5 stars for books, and that is based on the Goodreads rating system. You do not have to have a Goodreads account to be on Booktube. I do not have one. I have been thinking about making one though. But that's just the scale that people rate their books on, is 1 star, 1.5 star, 2 stars, whatever. And you just go based off of your own scale of things you enjoy in a book, things you don't enjoy in a book, and it's different for every single person. So hopefully this was helpful to you if you are someone looking to start Booktube, or you've started watching Booktube and you're super confused about what people are talking about. So I hope you enjoyed. If you have any more Booktube type questions, please leave them down below. I would love to answer them for you. And if I don't know the answer, I will recommend someone who probably does. So I hope you guys enjoy, and I hope you have happy reading, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.